There's, just a few questions that I wanted to ask you about the workshop that's coming up. Let's see, which one do I want to start with here? I think I'll start here. So this comes from partly my own observations too. So
yeah,
I observe from my interactions with people, but also I do a lot of reading of comments on social media. And one thing that I recognize is that just the word decolonization or decolonial ruffles people up and elicits really strong reactionary responses in people's systems.
Yeah.
Your teaching comes from a decolonial framework.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question is kind of like, will you talk about or introduce your approach with decolonial processes, but also why this is important, like vital, really, in finding our way back towards my language here, but I think you would agree towards some sort of basic and inherent goodness with nature.
100%. My own understanding of, decolonial work. First, you have to sort of say in the larger political sphere, decolonial work is about land back, which is sort of giving stewardship of the land and therefore the economics, the policies. Oh, wow. There's a loud noise outside my window just now. Do you hear that?
I do.
Somebody was spinning their tires in sort of like the parking lot that's actually like in the next lot over. So this idea of like decolonial work is fundamentally about like improving the material conditions of humanity and ecology by giving stewardship and policy of land management and all that entails back to indigenous people, right? So from that sort of baseline, you kind of have to pick where you fit in this struggle, right? It's like, where do you fit in this kind of like very vast, generations long remediation or repair cycle that we're actually in as a sort of species, right? Which is sort of, we're in this like post-colonial apocalypse, right? Where some people are really treated well and some people are really treated not well. And that's sort of the issue at the root, right? So there's an indigenous neuroscientist named Dr. Michael Yellowbird, and I first heard this term from him, which was called Neuro-decolonization. And he sort of like lays out this framework that all indigenous people, but he's, native to Turtle Island, America kind of vibe. He sort of lays out that like everything you see in any tradition, like Hindu, Buddhist, Daoist, in all the traditions of whatever, he says there's a corollary to in every tradition if you look hard enough. Like there's a version of meditation in his tradition, going into a cave and sitting in silence, and they call it something different. Maybe they don't call it meditation, but he's saying, from a neuroscientific perspective, any indigenous group, which is a group of people who are living sort of in relationship, in animistic relationship with the land, is going to have like a similar web of practices to sort of keep their mind, body, spirit, etc., sort of in sync with their nature, like whatever that is. They live in the desert. Well, they have their version of meditation to be in sync with the desert. And blah, 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 all over the place. So he basically sort of breaks down that like, in order to come to decolonization as a sort of political and material reality, where everyone is going to become more in equity with themselves and the land, living within their means, being satisfied with the cycles of time, extremely sort of nature-based ecology, and like a political and economic system that is based in ecology first, right? That he says, everyone's got to come to a neuro-decolonization, because actually what colonization does first is it colonizes the mind of the people it uses to then go colonize the land, right? It's like, white people are basically the first victims of sort of Euro colonization called whiteness, because they were promised a bunch of bullshit and then they were weaponized against other people in order to get that, right? It's like there's this kind of like first it happens at home kind of quality. It's like first it happens, like the call is first coming from inside the house. It's like our own addictions. And, of course, Buddhists say this too. It's like the issue is first coming within our own heart, right? There's really nothing going on outside. It just triggers something inside. And then we sort of take on this kind of role based on the things that we can't really deal with yet. Whether that's feeling uncomfortable, feeling shame, feeling disgust, feeling anger, whatever it is that we feel that we can't deal with starts to sort of feed into our neuro-colonization, essentially. And of course, any external political system will weaponize that, right? They'll kind of choose a scapegoat. Well, the reason you feel bad is because of these people. Now you have to go kill those people, right? And we see this happening all the time. So for me, I hemmed and hawed about this for a while, but the point is that I think I should be very honest when I say the word. And then if people are interested, I can explain it. If you're not interested, the same way that I could say anti-racist and some people would immediately kind of go, well, that means you hate white people. Well, that actually is saying a lot about that person. It has nothing to do with me, actually. Like that's not my definition, and that's not how I practice anything. So if there are super reactionary people, I think that sugarcoating my words to try to get them in the door is actually not a good learning environment for anyone. No one's going to learn anything there because they're going to be like, you tricked me. And I'm like, I did not trick you. But they're going to make up some idea that they were tricked into sort of self-hating themselves. But that's a remedial situation that I can't really deal with, right? It's like, it's not really, I really don't have the resources to deal with someone who's that far into their pain that they can hear a word and be so like violently angry about like what they think that means without questioning their own participation in that situation, right? I kind of had this, I was like, should I put decolonial even in the title? That's a question. And I think that it actually is the most honest because it's saying, yeah, this stuff that I'm going to share has direct ramifications to the socio-political economic situation that every human being is suffering the consequences of right now. So even though I'm going to talk about things like non-duality, animism, that might seem, I don't know, imaginal or like immaterial or somehow like not grounded in reality to some people, I'm actually saying, no, it's actually super grounded in reality. It's actually like the response to the reality that we're dealing with. It's like, this work that I'm doing is my response to essentially the forest fire of our time that is not going out. It's like the forest fire is growing, right? It's not becoming smaller. And so it would be a bit disingenuous of me to sort of like try to trick people when really I'm actually saying, and I'll maybe get into this in like a second question, I'm really saying it is the colonial value system that is creating the conditions we are existing inside of. Mm-hmm. It's the colonial value system. That's it. And so if we can then through talking through it in, facilitating a kind of inquiry process through that, we might then say, oh, okay, so then what's a decolonial value system? And then we get into the real meat of the workshop. Because now we can kind of go, what would that even look like to decolonize a value system when we live inside of a culture that is embedded a colonial value system in every single aspect of our lives? Mm-hmm. What would that even look like? Like, how can we imagine? It's like a fish imagining, like it doesn't even know what water is, but it's like imagining like some other situation in which it was not necessarily grown up in or adapted to. So in a way, it is quite, it is a quite daunting and complex topic that I'm actually attempting to simplify in this workshop. I'm attempting to take 3 hours and go, okay, we could talk about this for 10 years and never get anywhere, or I can cut to the chase in 3 hours and hopefully you walk away with something you can actually deal with. And in some way, that's also decolonial because it's like, you don't actually need all this. You don't need an academic. I don't even have an academic degree, but you don't need one. You're a human being. Great. Well, you can you're already here. You already have five senses, thoughts, and feelings. You already can examine those five senses, thoughts, and feelings. You already can sit with yourself and actually reflect on things. Okay, great. You have the basic components to do all this stuff. Let's then specifically and particularly sort of, hone our awareness in a certain way for 3 hours so that we could actually have a more precise angle on the situation. That's all, really. So to me, that is also neuro-decolonization because, there's a lot of anti-intellectualism going on now too. And I think sometimes for good reason, like a backlash, because some people have sort of lorded their intellectualism as a weapon. But actually, any regular person worth their salt, like, uses their mind effectively, whatever that means to them. And so that's all intellectualism really is, and to try to use your mind effectively, to understand a complex system in which a lot of the components of said system are sort of abstracted out over the course of your life, to try to be able to use your mind to actually model that in real time and go, okay, this is kind of a map, and I can kind of maybe now see I have some different options here because I could kind of mentalize this process a little bit. And so that's sort of partly where I'm coming from. It's not where I'm only coming from, because, as a somatics teacher, you understand it's like the mentalization only goes so far. And so then you have to have other steps and processes to sort of take the baton of that mentalization forward, in a sense, in your life. So that's sort of where I'm coming from with that. And that maybe didn't give a definition of decolonialism, because I think it is defined slightly differently by a lot of different people, and I think that it can all be correct. There can be a like wide variety of decolonization as a term, slightly focused on this idea that we can decolonize our perception because we can recognize that our perception has already been colonized. Our mind has already been sort of shaped in a way that we did not have informed consent with, right? And if we can kind of now, on the back end of being an adult, look at that again, we can maybe have a lot more information because we actually have lived through it. We actually do experience in some way what colonization does to bodies, even if those bodies are part of like the privileged class. It's like, no, but everyone's mind is colonized, whether you're rich or poor. You can actually witness that in your own life, right? So
yeah, I think that answer was really refreshing, because it really brings up the complexity of what this decolonial path looks like, what these processes are, and that it is varied for each person, and yet it is something that we're all swimming inside of, and it benefits all of us to be kind of leaning in to this colonized mindset and behavior system that is causing harm and not really taking us anywhere that is helpful at this point.